Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me again, and thanks to all of you for being in this presentation. A little explanation before starting. My first language is not English, so if sometimes I mispronounce something or sometimes I mix the order of sentences, just let me know, especially if there is any misunderstanding, just let me know, no worries. And a little bit about the history of assistive technology. Well, it's interesting to see that this area is as old as humanity in the end, because it's just thinking about the first person in the world, the first primitive person in the world who had an accident and suddenly had to walk around with a stick. Well, that stick was the first cane, and that first cane was assistive technology. So assistive technology in the end is as old as we are, as human are. So of course there is a more kind of organized aspect in this history. We have three periods in assistive technology. We have the foundational period, we have the establishment period, and the empowerment period. And the foundational is around 1817 when we have the first school for the deaf. And then we have the establishment, which is closely connected to the wars because there were so many soldiers coming back from war and they needed assistive technology. That assistive technology started to be designed like the Hoover cane. And then we have empowerment, and that is closely related to legal matters because there was a need to uh, provide access to people with disabilities to education and daily life in the end, but from a legal perspective. And that started in 1973 till nowadays. And I would say this presentation is part of that empowerment period too, because what we want to do in the end is to uh, present the need to give access to education to people with disabilities because we are promoting equal rights and an independent life. In the end, that's the most important objective of assistive technology and any kind of right that we give to people with disabilities is leading towards independence. So in order to give equal access to education or anything in life, technology is crucial. And IBM says that in a better way than I could do. In 1991, they said, for people without disabilities, technology makes things easy. For people with disabilities, technology makes things possible. And that's a huge difference. Now, technology, assistive technology, is not expensive as we could think. It doesn't have to be. And teachers, we can build assistive technology and we can use it in different areas. So it's something that is very, very close to us. So what can we do really? What is that we teachers can do to integrate assistive technology in our daily practices? Well, first of all, we have to know about it. We have to identify assistive technology. We have to make a difference between them and the purpose they have and apply them in the kind of real good settings, appropriate settings. And of course, ideally, we would have to build assistive technology. And the goal of this presentation is to push you a little bit to start doing all these four objectives, to get these four objectives little by little. It's just a little push today. But let's start with the definition. Assistive technology is any item or system bought or modified used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capacities of a person with a disability. Now, I have these three items over there because I wanted to portray this definition. One thing is to read it, another thing is to have that definition alive, let's say. You see to the left, this box is a box for adding, and it's a manipulative. And in that one, you can see actually math working for a student with any cognitive disability who cannot really understand the math adding process. Well, let's see, you can have some beans going through this section, this cup, and others through this one, and then you see them in the equal section, and you actually see getting more. So you see addition. And that's a low technology that you can build already with any kind of material. It's low assistive technology, that's the definition. And then to the right, you have an iPod. That's bought and it's mid technology. And let's say you have some lessons in your class and you decide to record those lessons and the instructional material. And then you give those lessons in the iPod. That's fantastic for a student with low vision or any, let's say, cognitive disability or memory issues. So that student could be listening to the lessons in equal access than any other student. And then to the right again, you have a calculator. This calculator has a built-in speech capacity. So it actually is going to talk the operation. And again, this will be mid technology. This is part of the continuum. There is a high technology. We're going to see that one in the coming slides. But I just wanted to show you how the definition works in the end. You have this technology that can help to increase, maintain, or improve a functional capacity, and it can be actually bought or modified. Now, for this presentation, I wanted to organize this assistive technology in 4 major areas. Of course, if you read literature, you will find many more areas. We are not including here all the systems and services that are around. I'm just focusing on assistive technology itself. But we will have the areas of daily life, instructional needs, computer access, and augmentative alternative communication. I'm going to focus on those 4. And let's start with aids to daily living. Just think a little bit of all the kind of things you do during your day. You talk to people, you use your mail, you use the phone, you eat, you remember things to do like going to a supermarket or writing something, you dress yourself. Okay, but think if you couldn't do that, how would you do it? What kind of independence would you have? Probably you would have to depend on someone. Well, that's exactly what we're trying to address with assistive technology. And you may see this look a little bit basic, but it's crucial. See this hand with a fork, and there is a kind of band around the hand is helping to hold the fork in order to grab food, of course, to feed yourself in an independent way. Also, you could use it for a pen or pencil. And then you have in the middle a whiteboard with a clock and a white space where you can either write sentences or draw some pictures, and that would help. It will be a sort of agenda in this case for people with memory loss or Alzheimer or ADHD or Down syndrome. In that case, you can draw, of course. So that's a way to have your life working and doing all your stuff normally. Down below, I wanted to have Evernote. Evernote has exactly the same function that this whiteboard. It helps to take notes. It gives you reminders of things that you have to do, the tasks that you have to do. But the difference, of course, is this one is low technology and Evernote will be high technology. Evernote is for free as far as I know. It's part of computers. When you buy them, when you buy the systems, it's in there. However, to have access to it, of course, you have to buy the computer, and that makes it expensive. And of course, it needs more development, technological development. And that's a kind of high technology, assistive technology. Now, to make a difference between them, when to use one or the other one, that depends on your user. That's the main reason why you choose between a high or low technology having the same purpose. What are the characteristics of your user? Then to the right, you see a phone with large keys. This is especially useful for people with low capacity to see the keys with some disability to see. And you do not need to buy a telephone like this. You can make those large numbers and glue them on the phone, on the keys. And this one, the last one, is a very interesting one. You may think it's very easy to make, and indeed it is, but it's very useful. It's a dressing assistive tool. And although it looks so simple, it's so meaningful that you can dress yourself. Now, these kind of assistive technologies can be used by people with some disabilities, like, let's say, poor fine motor coordination, or someone with cerebral palsy, for instance. But also we have to think that assistive technology is also for people who are growing old, which is in the end all of us. All of us are getting older, so all of us sooner or later can benefit from assistive technology. And we move to the next one, computer access. All of us use a computer either because we are working with a computer, or, well, let's see, we want to buy a ticket to travel somewhere and we use internet, or we need to pay our taxes, or we want to read a book, or we want to see a movie. So we use computers so much in our lives that if you, for any reason, don't have access to them, if you cannot manipulate your computer in a way, you do not have equal access to life. So what I want to show you is this, the Windows Accessibility Center. It's also in a Mac, which is included in your computer. You do not have to buy anything for this. It is already there. Now, this is not a tutorial, so I'm not going to step in every section. Later on, you can review your own computer and you will find it, and you can adjust the features. But when you start your computer, you have the setting option, and you have the Accessibility Center or the Ease of Access Center. And you have different features like the narrator, the magnifier, the high contrast, keyboard, mouse. And let's say you want to work with the keyboard. So if you select the keyboard, you would have the keyboard displaying on the screen. Why would you need that one? Let's suppose you have any issue with your hands and you cannot really press the keys on your keyboard. It's too difficult for you for whatever reason, but you still can move the mouse. So just moving the mouse, you will be able to check on these keys on the screen. Then there is another option, the mouse. You can make the pointer bigger, so it will be easier to see. And also you can make the movement of the mouse slow, very slow, so you can track it easily. That's especially good for people with visual disabilities. Then this narrator and the high contrast. The narrator is going to read whatever is happening on the screen. And the high contrast is especially useful for people with visual disabilities, where you can have one section in black and the other one in yellow, for instance, or black and white. So in that way, you're helping people with visual disabilities again. And of course, you have exactly the same features in Mac. Of course, you will find them in a different way, in a different section with a different name. I don't think they tend to change the names of these when they have new updates or versions. So you will have to go to System Preferences, then Universal Access, and then you will find this menu with seeing, hearing, keyboard, mouse, and trackpad. And they have exactly the same purpose as the one that we saw in Windows. VoiceOver option, and of course a keyboard. And also it has the option for the mouse, so you can have a larger pointer. You can have the trackpad option able or available. And also there is an accessibility checker for your documents in Mac and in Windows. And this is really relevant because we teachers, we create so much instructional material using Office, Word, Excel, or PDF. and we do not really pay much attention to the fact that maybe those are not accessible for people with any kind of disability, especially visual disability. So you can have available the accessibility checker, and that one is going to check your PowerPoints and your Word and your Excel. Also, you can check the availability, the accessibility in your OneNote program and your mail. And if we check specifically in PowerPoint, I wanted to talk specifically about this one because I would say it's one of the most used tools for teaching. When we create a PowerPoint, what we can do is go to the Start section, and then we choose Check Accessibility. And we go back to our PowerPoint, and we will see a table there, which is the Inspector, Accessibility Inspector. And that one is going to be showing all the errors that we have. It's going to display the reason why there is an error in accessibility, and it's going to give us the directions to implement or to solve the issues. The main issues that we have with PowerPoint is that we tend to delete the layout that we have in PowerPoint. So normally we have the title, the text, and a section for an image. And what we do is we start writing, and then we delete the section and the other section, and we get our own pictures, and we get our own text, and it looks fantastic. However, a screen reader like JAWS, for instance, wouldn't be able to read it because the layout is not there. So that's a problem when we tend to change the whole layout in PowerPoint. And some advices is to keep the layout and also to give an alternative text to pictures. Why? Because in that way, the screen reader is going to read the alternative text. Let's suppose you're teaching something about, I don't know, anatomy, and you have the ear there, an image of your ear or any ear, and you want to show something about that. So you just have the ear. But if you do not add alternative text to that ear, the only thing that the screen reader is going to read is image 1. It's not descriptive enough. And in that way, the student is not having equal access to the content, the instructional content. So that's something that we want to avoid, to prevent. And this tool is related to the browsers, Chrome. Chrome, I would say Mozilla, and all browsers, I guess they all have an option for accessibility. We just have to be curious and start kind of checking there. But Chrome has this app, which is for high contrast. So if sometimes the website that you're visiting and you're showing to your student doesn't have already the high contrast, just don't worry. Use this app. You have to just download it, and you will have it in your browser. You can have it on and off. So just turn it on when you realize that your students need to have this higher contrast. And not all websites will consider this idea of having the high contrast. That's why this application is so useful. And I'm including here the link so you can later on download it and use it in your own computer. Now, moving on, let's see what we have for instructional purposes. As I was telling you, we really need to have access to equal education. And in this case, if we define the assistive technology that we use in this area, we see that these items help educate a person in a school or during employment training. And these are instructional aids that include technology that is used to compensate for a person's functional limitation, like the screen reader I was mentioning to you just a few seconds ago, or technology that is used for remediation purposes. Just see the one to the right, sorry, the left. You have this little section here, this window that is focusing on just one line in the book, and in that way it's helping you to focus. It is very helpful for people with dyslexia, but also if you have some visual issues, you can use this one, or ADHD too. Then you have this one. It's a highlighter, but it's fantastic to focus on the main words of a content. Then you have the subtraction squish. This is a sort of sensory game, and there is a line with numbers. So what the student would have to do is just press every piece here, and in that way he's counting. He's actually feeling the numbers. And this one is very, very nice, because with this one you can show the operations to students, like adding, but also the position of numbers like unit, hundreds, or thousands. As you can see, all of these are really low technology. These are really easy to build for you. And these are also for instructional purposes. You have this is a sentence, and it's a sort of booklet, and the sentence is made of pictures and the term under the picture. But what you can do is to just turn over all the elements of the sentence, so you can have different sentences. And in that way, you help your students to increase their vocabulary and focus. With this one, this is for practicing endings of words, and it's a sort of game in the end. And you can have your student practicing once and again, the ending of words. And the last one, it's augmented reality. I wanted to just mention a little bit about augmented reality and virtual reality. I would say nowadays that's becoming a very, very important assistive technology, because just think of those students who have cerebral palsy and cannot really have some feelings, some physical sensations, like they do not know what it feels to cross a river or walk within a forest, in a forest. Well, when you have virtual reality, you can recreate that if you have a very good quality, of course. They can really make you feel the environment. So if you can have virtual reality with some of your students with disabilities, it will make a big difference. Although I have to say virtual reality is still a little bit expensive, I will recommend it if you can make or be part of any project. That would be fantastic. That's another step in assistive technology. And augmentative and alternative communication. Well, so far we've been talking about assistive technology for accessing or for having a daily normal life, for learning in a better way. But sometimes we have students who do not communicate at all. They cannot produce any, well, sometimes they can produce sounds, but they cannot really produce verbal messages. And in that case, we need augmentative and alternative communication. These are devices that help people to communicate with each other, even if they have speech difficulties. See this one. This is a communication board, and it's low technology. So the student can have these images over here, which is in the end the vocabulary, and then they can point and indicate what they want, what they don't want, what they want to say in other words. That's their way to communicate. And as I said, it's low technology. You could build this one. These two are programs. I'll tell you a little bit more about those later on in the next slide. But these two also help to build communication with other people. Something that you have to take into account, of course, is that the other person, student, should have some capacities, like maybe moving their eyes or moving fingers or moving their feet. Because if you want to say, okay, would you prefer this or that one? Well, you have to look maybe to the eyes or the fingers, and the person will move those, and you will realize, okay, this means is this one, not the other one. But that's something that you have to consider for the design, which is something that we will check also later on. These are the programs that I wanted to present to you for augmentative and alternative communication. These are the editing programs: Arasac, Amplafon, and JClip. These two are, well, the three of them are from Spain. Maybe you know more, but I know this from Spain, and the good thing, the beauty of this is that you can edit. They bring some images already there, like I want to eat, or I want to eat an apple. But if you want to use images from your student, from the context, you can do that. You can take pictures and you can add them over here. You can even record yourself with the sentences. If you don't want to have sentences, if you just want to have the picture, you can also do that. The most difficult part in this is not really using the program, it's not editing, is the task of designing and defining the vocabulary for the person. Because in a way, you are becoming the communication, the dictionary for that person. So it's your responsibility to choose the appropriate words. If the person wants to express anger or happiness, you are the one who has to have those words over there. And if the person wants to say something that is very, let's say, nice to someone else, well, you have to have those words. You become the expression of that person. And that is a little bit complex. So that takes design. And I would say this is one of the most important sections, the instructional design part. When you design any of these assistive technologies, either low, mid, high, you always have to start from the idea that your user, your student, is unique. And being a unique person with unique needs, even if you say, okay, he has Down syndrome, well, but they are not the same. All of them will have a different context, different needs and interests. So you have to know that person. And in that case, you have to apply the analysis, the learner analysis and the context analysis from the instructional design section to know exactly how that person is, what he likes, what he doesn't like, where and when that assistive technology is going to be used. Let's suppose you design a fantastic assistive technology for a student who's 5 years old, and later on, when she's 10, she doesn't want to use it anymore. Well, because she grew up and she didn't like the design of a 5-year-old kid. So that makes sense. And it's something that you have to take into account when you design. Same if you want to design an assistive technology and you do not take into account the family. Well, maybe they don't know how to use that assistive technology. That means that you will have to create a handout. What if the teacher working with that student is going to be there for 6 months and then she's going to move? Well, again, you have to create a handout for the next person. What if you create a fantastic assistive technology that needs a replacement piece, or you need to replace a piece, but that one is too expensive and the family doesn't have the means? So all those things are essentials when you are designing, and that's why you follow this cycle of analysis, design, development, implementation, evaluation, and it's a cycle. You have prototypes. You are never done with the first time you create an assistive technology. You have to go on and on and on and testing, because we're not the person. And it's just by testing with him or her that you will realize, okay, I have to change this or I have to add this. And that's why universal design and instructional design are so important in this phase. And technology is important, your knowledge of software in this case, but it's not as relevant as this phase. And all this cycle is closely related to instructional design. Actually, the person who started the term universal design is an engineer. It's person coming from industrial engineer. When he was a kid, he had an accident and he couldn't use some devices. And when he grew up and he decided to be an an industrial engineer, he created those machines with big, large keys, because he realized how difficult it was for him when he was a child and he had this accident to check the keys, to press the keys. And that's the story of universal design then. It's coming from industrial engineering. And I hope I got closer to this idea of identifying assistive technology and the purpose and the characteristics and how to apply them and how to build them. I would be very happy to know that you are already building assistive technology. And these are the links that I told you, links to the programs. I strongly recommend this website, WebMA, and this Center for Inclusive Technology, which is a Spanish resource. I do recommend this for apps. It's in English, and there are plenty. There are so many apps for people with disabilities nowadays. Some of them are for free, some others aren't, but there is a whole world in apps. And of course, the links to Windows and Mac, and just to check the accessibility. And these links for resources for assistive technology, for dyslexia, for ADHD, for math, for autism, for Down syndrome. You just get these links and you can find the information. We will have this information posted later on. So these are more resources, something for you to read coming from UNESCO. And if you have any question right now, or that's my email if you want to know something else. I hope this was helpful for you. And it's a very, very beginning.
Thank you, Paola, for this excellent and interesting presentation. At this point, we open the floor for questions and comments that you may have. You could type down in the chat. While we receive your questions and your comments, I want to remind you all that this PowerPoint presentation, as well as the synopsis and the video recording of the webinar, will be available on our virtual community of practice on the link that you see on your screens. And also the video recording will be available on our YouTube channel at ITEN.com. So while we wait for questions, Paola, I would like to go back to the presentation that you had on Friday, which is on the same topic, but it was in Spanish. And I'd like to ask you the same question that I asked you in that presentation, and that was related to the roles of the different actors of the Spanish community, of the education community. What are the role that they play in integrating this assistive technology in the classroom and also working with their students? When I talk about different actors, I mean the parents, the principals, the directors, and the other education actors.
Normally in this process, when someone has or requires an AT, there are at least 7 professionals involved, but it depends on the schools. That's the ideal. But you need the director of the school, because that person is going to probably try to get the funds to get the assistive technology. You need someone who's going to check the social situation of the family, if they need some funding or not, and is going to assist them in that regards. You need someone from special education. We call it in Spanish special educator. And that person, of course, is going to deal with all the kind of practicing with assistive technology and the student, the day-to-day activity. Then you need I wouldn't say the normal teacher. We mean the teacher that's not for special ed, but it's working with the student too, who's going to probably learn how to use this assistive technology too, and try to organize all the curricula to teach this student. And of course, the family is essential. They are the ones that are going to continue using the assistive technology at home with the students. So if we have something for them to practice or to read, it's not enough to have it in the classroom. You need to go on at home. And in that case, the family, those are the ones who have to use also the assistive technology with the student. So assistive technology wouldn't wouldn't have any impact on the student if just one person once a week uses the technology with a student. It has to be a collaborative effort. So there are speech therapists too who are involved in this process. So as I said, there are at least 7 or more or less professionals involved in this area. So that's my answer.
Thank you, Paola. Do we have more questions or comments? Mary, Maya, Sharon, Sylvia? I saw Sylvia and Mary said, thank you, very interesting presentation. Thank you for your participation in the live streaming of this webinar.
Maybe you can share something about your own experience with assistive technology, if you have any experience. Well, that's the idea, is to give you plenty of resources so you can start checking and creating, building. I would recommend Pinterest. If you visit Pinterest, you will find many resources, many low assistive technology. Of course, those are just the ideas. Then you have to build a case, let's say, and design it using the principles of universal design and instructional design. But you will find some ideas over there. It will be interesting to know about your experience in assistive technology in your own countries. Yeah, that's the idea. I have those resources over there, and I strongly recommend you to check your computer, your own computer, and the web browser. Sometimes we don't think they will have something, and yeah, I guess all the web browsers, all of them have the accessibility component because it's a law. So they have to comply with that law, and yeah, they will have it.
Well, Paola, I guess we don't have any more questions nor comments. I guess we could wrap up here. And oh, look, Mary just posted, we do use a lot of assistive technology without giving consideration to it.
Right. Actually, if you think, well, my classes are assistive technology already. And most of the time, I was just reading today that sometimes nowadays we take pictures of what we were writing on the whiteboard, and just because we don't want to write it. But if you have a student with ADHD doing that, that will be an assistive technology then. If you get a camera or a phone or an iPad that can take pictures, obviously, and you take the picture of something written on the whiteboard, that's already helping that purpose. So it's interesting. Even the calculator was an assistive technology, and later on we started to use it as a device for us, for people without disabilities. There are many resources and items that are not intended for people without disabilities, but we started using those, so it's interesting. Yeah, Mary, there is much that you can build too.
Okay, Paola, so I think this is it. Thank you so much once again for your participation, for sharing with us your own experience on the topic. Thank you for the teachers that joined us on the live streaming of this webinar. Once again, you can access all the materials on our virtual community of practice and also the video recording on our YouTube channel in the next days. I guess this is the end of the presentation of our session. Paola, thank you.
Thanks. Thanks to you.
And we'll see you next month with other presentations on teacher professional development. Bye to all.
Bye.